Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to welcome you to 5 tips for leading multi-generational teams. First, I'd like to take a couple moments and tell you a little bit about your sponsors. We are NewView Business Solutions. I am Michelle Hellman, and NewView is a full-service training company. With me today is our presenter, Cam Marston. Cam is the founder and president of Generational Insights and is a leading expert on generational change and its impact on the workplace and marketplace. Before we get started, I just want to point out a few housekeeping items. We have muted your lines. Please feel free to type in any questions that you may have in the chat box in your control panel, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen. Throughout the session, we will ask a poll, and we may ask some questions that we ask you to raise your hand and respond to. That hand is also located in your control panel. In addition, this session will be recorded, and we'll share the recording with all participants at the end of the session. So the purpose of our webinar today is really to help you gain some insight into the generations in the workplace. Also gain an understanding of why does it matter, and also provide you with 5 tips for leading multi-generational teams. In the end, you will be better able to lead your multi-generational team. Before I turn this over to Cam, I'd like to take a quick poll to see who we have on the line with us today as far as what generations are represented. You'll see on the current slide, the generations now are the matures, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, millennials, and the I generation. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll here for you, and I'd like you to go ahead and respond to the question. So one moment here, and we will launch the poll. All right, on your screen, you should see a poll. I'd like you all to just take a moment and respond based on the generation you represent. I'll wait maybe another moment here. We almost have 100% voting, so I'm just going to wait another moment to capture all the votes. Great. Well, it looks like we've got 40% baby boomers, 30% Gen Xers, and 30% millennials on the call today. So thank you so much for voting. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. And what I'd like to do now is turn this over to Cam so he can share some insights with you on the generations and why does it matter. So Cam, I'm just going to take a moment here and I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you are. I appreciate this opportunity. Let me get myself queued up here. Is this my screen? Yeah, show my screen. Making sure I've got all the technology working correctly. Michelle, if you see anything wrong here, let me know. Again, let me go back one slide here. Oh, all right. How do we go back one slide?
Perfect. We are seeing your screen, Cam.
Okay. And this is, there we go. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about myself and where we're going to go with this content. What my company does, Generational Insights, we study the demographic trends that are impacting the workplace as well as the marketplace. We use a lot of our content generationally. We study it through a generational lens, and we work with our clients to better understand how these changes are impacting both their marketplace and their workplace. What we're going to focus on today are the generational preferences in your workplace to better understand who these different generations are, how they show up, and most importantly, how to work within each of the groups. So you see the ages of the generations here on this slide. What I want to do is get into what I think is the most significant part of this, and that is the rapid change going on in our workplace. I know many of you that are listening in are keenly aware of this already. That's probably why you're on this call as it is. But this is what our research is showing us here of the change in the makeup of the workplace. I want you to follow, if you will, the baby boomer wedge of the pie as we go through this. The baby boomer wedge being the purple. 1986, not too long ago, 20 years-ish, 96, it hadn't much changed. And then we begin to see things really start to assert themselves. Take a look. The mature generation is the other, which is the red, is likely the matures here. Well, I know it is the matures. You see the rise of the Generation Xers here, and the small, I guess that's a teal color, of the millennials. And then we see this massive change going on. And the final one here, which is 2026, the extraordinary dominance of the millennials in the workplace that's coming on. And when most people look at this, they think, well, this millennial generation, soon going to be, is the dominant generation, will continue to be so. But the part of the puzzle that's uncovered is that with this means also the demise of the baby boomers, which we clearly see here, out of the workplace, and the significance of the transfer of wisdom, of what I like to call the institutional knowledge from one generation to the next. That baby boom generation is in a critical position today to facilitate the transfer of institutional wisdom from the senior members of workplace to the youngest members of the workplace. The Generation Xers are in the same position, trying to manage that as we, my peer group, I'm a Generation Xers, have moved into positions of leadership. So this dynamic change is not, it's something that frankly I used to talk about as coming. This is going to be important to us. It's no longer coming, it's here. And again, I'm certain that's why so many of you are on the call today, what to do about it. So let's keep going here. I want to be clear on what I'm talking about, and these are workplace preferences. My company has 20 years in this research, and what we've identified are characteristics or preferences of each of the different generations in the workplace today, and when and where they show up. And I want to be clear that I'm defining preferences clearly for everyone else. Preferences are based on data or firsthand experiences. They're used to begin to understand a group's motivations. The information is broad, and most importantly, it leaves room to consider individuals. Meaning, when I go through, and what I'm about to do is show you the workplace preferences of each of the dominant generations in the workplace today, it means that you will certainly know people that don't fit those preferences. It means these preferences are generalizations of what our research has shown. And if I go introduce myself to a baby boomer in the workplace, I should expect to see these preferences come out. But if I notice something different, then what we see here is individuality different than the preferences. And the reason I draw this out a little bit is that there's a difference between preferences and stereotypes. What I'm showing you are workplace preferences. Stereotypes are a whole different game. They categorize people with no allowance for individuality. I'm going to show you what our research reveals to be workplace preferences. And those of you who are in management and leadership positions likely will recognize these preferences as we go through them. This is not to say each one of the members of generations are going to will resemble these preferences exactly. That is not the case. That would be a stereotype. Examples of preferences: men are more task-oriented than women. We all know men that aren't as much. Millennials tend to be technologically savvy and comfortable with technology. These are preferences, and want to make sure that these are clear. There's a difference between the preferences and the stereotypes. So we will keep moving on here into the first tip, which is the baby boomer. I'm sorry, tip 2. Tip 1, let's understand what preferences are and how to identify them in the workplace. We've talked about that. Here's what our research shows to be baby boomer workplace preferences. They're collaborative and efficient in communication. In-person contact is preferred. Eye contact or conference calls is a second alternative. We know the preferences of the baby boom generation tend to be to gather people together in meetings, in functions where they are physically in the same room. Now, this can't be done all the time, but that is a workplace preference of the baby boomers. The second bullet there, workaholic schedule, typically defined in the hours spent on the job. When the baby boomers define work ethic, it's usually measured in a time component, meaning show me your work ethic, which would mean get there early and stay late. I need to have you visible in my work. And one of the challenges many of the baby boomers face is a different definition of quote unquote work ethic from younger generations. Third bullet, they believe in the apprentice to master model, a pay your dues model. The baby boom generation went through this. They were, in my opinion, the last generation that truly submitted to the apprentice to master model and paid their dues and earned their right to lead and take on leadership responsibilities. Since the Xers and since the millennials, due to technology, this pay your dues aspect has largely left the workplace. In my knowledge, thinking historically here, there's never been something like technology which has suddenly placed the youth in a workplace with more knowledge on how to get things done than the senior members of the workplace. Technology is the first disruptor the workplace has seen, where the youth know more than the seniors, and that conflicts with the apprentice to master model. The boomers, many, still believe in the apprentice to master model and the pay your dues effort. And many of the baby boomers listening in, if I were to sit in with them, they would certainly be able to tell me stories about how they had to pay their dues and put their backs to the wheel and the nose to the grindstone in the midnight hour and all that stuff. Pay your dues is very important. What is that? The fourth bullet, prefers acknowledgement in front of teams or through promotions. The competitive nature of the baby boom generation, due largely to the way they were raised and in the environment in which they were raised by a militaristic generation, being the matures, and a very crowded generation where the birth rate surged, competition has become a part of who the baby boomers are. And you will find many that are very competitive and some not as much. But when they do well, generally, a new title, a recognition in front of their team, something that will tell their peers, whether in or outside of the workplace, that they're doing well. And finally, the deference to their wisdom and seniority. Wisdom comes from time, comes from years on the job, comes from tenure, and these are the characteristics, the workplace preferences that the baby boomers developed as they came into the workplace. They are largely still in place today, and we will begin to see how these preferences contrast with one another, which becomes the key to managing a multi-generational workplace. Now, one more note on these preferences before we go into the Generation Xers. Each of us has a memory. Let's take each of us individually. A memory of something that it occurred to us as a child, that we experienced as a child, that happened to us, whatever it may be, and that memory in some way shapes our behavior today. Regardless of your generation, that memory shapes your behavior today. A generation, in a very loose and simple explanation, is a group of people who share memories that have shaped their behavior today. And when you have such massive groups of people, the memories they typically share are national or economic memories, economic times, national events, etc. My grandmother's memories of the Great Depression and the Second World War shapes her behavior today at 94 years old. My Gen X memories of the way I was raised due to a two-parent working household shapes my behaviors today and influences my management style, which I'll show you in one moment. The baby boomers are no different. What they experienced in their coming of age shapes their leadership methods today, and it has led to these workplace preferences. Let's move into the Generation Xers. What do we know about the Xers? Their workplace preferences. There's a one-way communication that is generally preferred with the Xers, and an email is more often than not the way they prefer to do it. In other words, I'll tell you what you need to know. I'll give you the feedback that you need to know from me, regardless whether it's management, regardless whether it's subordinate. Email in one way. Notice it's not a dialogue. Notice it's not a group of people collected around the table. These are the Generation Xer workplace preference of I'll send you what you need to know. Contrast that with the baby boomer preference, which is it's important that we gather and spend time and make eye contact and talk or get a conference call, which leads to the second bullet. For many of the Xers, the meetings are a poor use of time. Those consensus building meetings that the baby boomers were raised on and have come to rely on, the Xer has backed away from. This is not a good use of time. I'll email you what you need to know. The third one is no surprise. This is the characteristic of both Xers and millennials, and that is flexibility in scheduling, which contrasts with the traditional historical baby boom definition of work ethic. Flexibility in scheduling means I'll do the work when it's needed. I'll be there when I'm needed, versus the baby boomer work ethic of get here early, stay late, I need to see you. Fourth bullet in quotes. I do my best work when I'm left alone to do my job. Leave me alone, let me get it done, versus the collaborative effect or the team effect of the baby boomer, and what we'll see momentarily, the group or team effect of the millennial generation. The Xer, leave me alone to get my job done. Fourth, what is that? Fifth bullet, time off rewards as a recognition. If I'm doing well, let me go away. If I'm doing well, I may not want more responsibility. If I'm doing well, I need less of this, not more of this, which is very different from the baby boomer. If I'm doing well, I want a promotion, a raise, and I want it in front of my peers. The last two bullets, I can figure this out, and go figure it out yourself. Leave me alone to figure things out versus go telling the next generation, go figure it out yourself. And there's a key differentiation in this, which is this is the latchkey kid coming alive. Let me figure this out myself. And that's often the way they manage and lead to the millennial generation particularly. You don't need me to tell you how to do this. Go figure it out yourself. So these preferences that have developed through the Generation Xers over time, particularly had a huge foundation in their coming of age years, are now manifesting themselves in the workplace. And we can already see some conflict between the Generation X management and leadership style, the baby boomer style, whether they are the manager or the leader, which gets us next into the millennial style. What do we know about them? Well, let's begin. Workplace preferences. Immediate communication, immediate feedback. No doubt that technology has had a lot to do with that. And another big thing in this is the parenting styles that the millennials were raised under. They, of course, had no choice in parenting styles. They reacted to the parenting styles. But the parenting styles of the baby boomers, incidentally, the boomers are the predominant generation of parents of the millennials. You'll certainly find some Xers that are millennial parents, but they're mostly baby boomers. Those baby boomers became helicopter parents hovering over their children, and their children's needs were addressed fairly quickly by the parents. As a result, one of the millennial workplace preferences is I need feedback. I need it through technology, or I need it through the attention of the superior, just like they were raised. Second bullet, work only the hours needed to accomplish the task or project. Again, a big conflict between flexibility of the Generation Xer and even work ethic of the baby boomer. Give me the job, I'll fulfill the job. This element of having to be at the workplace all the time, or whatever it may be, is less important than me filling the job. Give me the clear description of the job and I'll get it done. The third bullet, seek both individual attention from the leadership. What's this means? A little bit of typo there. The leadership needs to spend quality time, high impact time one-on-one with the individual and with the group, which is not laid out there. So both individual and group-oriented time from the leadership. This group-oriented workplace is the fourth bullet. We see this as a result of the coming of age years. The millennial generation was educated around tables as children. They created group learning in grade schools, intermediate schools, grade schools, etc. Most of the other generation were raised going to school in rows, facing the back of the head of the kid in front of them. The group interaction, the group stimulation that the millennials learned as children has maintained in their lives and is now a part of the workplace. They work best in groups. They work best when seated near one another or interacting with one another. Can hold impromptu meetings together around the tables. The next one, what is that? The fifth, regular recognition. not only in times of great achievements or great awards, but a regular recognition for things well done. Not exceptional, not annual, but on a regular basis. And this is very different from the baby boomer element of pay your dues, put your nose to the wheel, don't expect to get attention for 4 or 5 years. The next to last one, need to enjoy the work, need to believe in the company. We see this very clearly. Need to have a connection with the purpose of the organization, a connection with what the company does. If they get the feeling that the company that they work for or that they're interviewing to work for is solely in the business to make a profit, it turns them off. There's got to be a greater role, a greater purpose, and they need to enjoy what the company role is and believe in what it is that they're doing. And the last one, help me figure this out. Come to me and help me figure this out, or let me bring my issues to you and help me figure this out. So what we see, again, very clearly, is this contrast between the millennial element of help me figure this out, the Generation X element of go figure it out yourself, and the baby boomer element of you got to pay your dues, you got to spend your time, the apprentice to master model. These are many of the preferences of each of these generations that cause conflict. A typical workplace leader, any one of you listening in right now, is likely going to want to manage and lead, support people the way you want it yourself. That's what our research shows. I, as a Generation Xer, am going to give you the support, the attention, the leadership that I would want as a Generation Xer. These are my workplace preferences, and I'm going to presume that you share my workplace preferences. It's not until we get into the content do I realize that my workplace preferences are unique to me, that they're different, and that for me to best serve you, millennial, me to best serve you or lead you, baby boomer, I've got to understand what's important to you and give you that leadership and that attention that you need, not what I think you should need, but that you need. Which leads us to tip number 5, leading multi-generational teams, where we kind of put it all together here. Step 1, identify, acknowledge your own workplace preferences. I think that's a big one. What are my workplace preferences? Where do they come from? When, where, and how they surface on any given work day? And eliminate the question, why are they different? Meaning my employees, meaning my team. And adopt the question, how am I different? It is typical of the workplace leader to want to say, this is how they're different, or this is what I'm struggling with them. They're different, they need different things, and I struggle. Versus you saying, maybe it's me, maybe I'm the one that's different. And that's where we've learned the greatest progress comes from the individual that's able to say to him or herself, perhaps it's me that's different. Perhaps it's me that's wanting something different here. Perhaps if I could change my expectations, then this multi-generational workplace would be a better and easier place to manage. And from our experience, once people can identify their own preferences and ask how their preferences are different from the people that they lead and they manage, the greatest progress happens at that point. It's mostly, I would say, 70% self-awareness. The 30% is simply reacting to the other workplace demands. Okay, third bullet. Where can you allow other generations' workplace preferences to flourish rather than demanding your own preferences dominate? And that's key. That's what we were just talking about. What we know, and I think anybody that's been in the workplace for a while recognizes this, people will work harder for you if they like you. People will go to the wall for you if they like you. You create high performance teams when your teammates like your leadership style. You don't create high performance teams because you tell them we need to be a high performance teams. We need to be a high performance team. They become high performance teams when they like you, when they want to work for you, when they want to give back to you as much as you're giving to them. And we do that by understanding our own workplace preferences and getting out of the way. Getting out of the way of ourselves. There's no doubt, if I can tell a millennial, the Xer, the baby boomer, if this is the way you want to do it and it still will get the job done, do it that way. My preferences are getting in the way. And suddenly this employee is empowered to complete the task in the way that they want to do it. And the result, I like him. I like my boss. I like her. She really lets me do the things that I think are important. And if she needs me to go to the wall for her, I'd be happy to do so. So when you push people, when you allow your preference to dominate, what you've got to ask yourself, is there a cost in your demands? Is there a motivation cost? Is there a goodwill cost? It's important, though, to recognize there may be parts of the workplace that compromise is, for business reasons, impossible. Have you clearly explained what they are and why? We were doing this workshop not long ago for a hospital system, and it became very clear, obviously, that nursing can't happen at home. You can't work from home as a nurse. It simply doesn't work if you work in a hospital. And those are types of demands that are obviously not negotiable. We can do many things, you may say, but there's flexibility limitations in what we can do. They need to be stated up front. There must be a business case for what it is that you do. And if the demands of the workforce contradict your reason for being, your team's reason for being, then those things are simply non-negotiable, and there's no question about that. And finally, can you adjust your leadership focus to allow your team members' generational workplace preferences to flourish where possible? Can you, as I like to say it, get out of your own way? Can you step aside and let others' workplace preferences flourish, the ones that we've listed here, so that they can be happier, perhaps, in their job and want to work for you because you're the team lead? So what we've tried to do is identify what the preferences are, and then what a preference is, and then what the preferences are in the three dominant generations in the workplace today, the boomers, the Xers, and the millennials. In identifying these preferences, we learn where our own biases, where our own preferences may be getting in the way. And if we can get out of the way of our own preferences and let someone else's flourish, we're going to find a more active, engaged workforce, creating high-performance teams who will do all they can for you. The key is to understand your own preferences, identify where they come out, and to ask yourself, am I getting in my own way here, or can I let them to flourish, let the others to flourish? And if they do, you'll see a great reaction to the team. So with that, I turn it back over to you, Michelle, with questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Cam. I am going to go ahead and take this back over, and we really appreciate everything you shared with us today. Okay, we have a few minutes left here, and I'd like you to take this opportunity, if you have any questions, to go ahead and type them in your chat box, and we'll take a moment or two to respond to any of those questions. All right, Cam, I see one question here. It's kind of a two-part question asking, how do workplace preferences change over time? And can I ever expect the younger generations to come around and act like my generation?
That is a typical question of a senior member of the workplace of when are they going to, another one, the way I hear it, when are they going to quote unquote grow up? And my response is these preferences by each generation have been shaped very clearly, very concretely early on, and they're likely not going to change all that much. We do become more conservative as we age, but these preferences that we're seeing in each of the generations today have been there for a long time, and I don't expect them to change due to age, due to upcoming life stage changes. These preferences are likely going to be with each of the generations throughout their working career. It's not something that we can wait out, essentially. It's just not one of the things we can wait out.
Okay, thanks, Cam. Here is another question. Let me summarize here. Can you provide some tips on how to talk to people constructively about differences rather than better or worse habits or styles?
I think the thinking around what a preference is a great way to enter that conversation. When people say it's better, when people say their style or their model is better, what usually they're saying is, I'm more familiar with this, it has a proven background to it, I'm more familiar with it, you need to do it this way. However, in our time today, we can point to many different organizations where people have a different style of doing things, and it's been remarkably successful, particularly in the tech industry, but not only in tech, but in manufacturing. We have different preferences, different styles showing up that are doing the job well. So when people want to say that theirs is better, the response is, have you tried the other way? Is there room to try another way? Why do you say it's better? Because you're more familiar with it? Because it has history here? Could there be another way of approaching this? I think the questioning around now there's a caveat here, and I see this particularly in young entrants into the workplace, not just millennials, but this was the case when Generation X entered. And that was they enter some new workplace and they immediately spot a different way of doing things and suggest that this different way of doing things would be better than the old way of doing things, with the attitude of it's new, it's young, it's fresh, perhaps it's technology driven, therefore it is better. Unquestionably, I have never seen a workplace eager to throw out their processes because somebody new has stepped into their workplace, unproven, with no background, and said they've spotted a new way to doing things. When I work with young entrants into the workplace, I let them know, you must very clearly show your employer, your manager, your supervisor, and your teammates that you understand their processes and you can function within and duplicate and replicate those processes as necessary before you suggest anything new and better. So better can come from two places. One, someone senior saying my way of doing things is better because it's proven to work. Or two, someone younger coming into the workplace, a new entrant to the workplace, saying my way is better because it's different. What I know is that it's preferred by the person that's recommending it, and the question has to be, why do you feel it's better? Do you know the alternative method? Have you shown that it works well? And explore that. I think what we'll find is what comes out is preferences. It's their preference that it happens this way, not better.
Thank you, Cam. And we'll take one last question here. It's a good question here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Question is, how can you build teams when some want to meet face-to-face and others do not?
The others do not. Some want to meet face-to-face. All right, there's no question that the dialogue through a face-to-face engagement is a better way to build a team. I don't care what opposition may say. It's a better way to build a team. Empathy and sincerity and concern and care and all that is developed through interpersonal contact. If there are those that don't want to meet face-to-face, and it is a component, and let me back up. If the job will succeed or fail based on how closely the team works together, then those that don't want to meet face-to-face must just get used to it. And therefore, perhaps, you manage this in some way or another to say, yeah, we're going to have a team meeting on these dates that are mandatory. There will be other team meetings outside of that maybe you don't have to attend or you can call into. But these are mandatory that you attend. They're a part of the form and function of the success of the team is that we're all here. And you find a compromise. One generation's preference is that all the teams are together on a regular basis discussing what needs to be discussed. Another's preference would be we do that as little as possible. If it is the success of the team that's dependent upon the team getting together and engaging one another in person, then you must mandate that for at least some of those meetings. And it's uncompromisable in my opinion. There's a line between making people happy and creating a successful team. And sometimes that line sometimes you have to make people unhappy to create the successful team. However, when you can work with those individuals that don't want to be on the team or don't want to come to the meetings and say to them, you don't have to come to them all, but here are 5 over the next 6 months that I insist you're a part of. Make plans to be there. You are compromising in a way, and let them know that, and that the function of or the success of the team will depend on them being present at those events.
Great. Thank you so much, Cam. We also had a couple other great questions here, but I do want to be cognizant of time. What we will do is we will follow up to these via email so that we can respond to your concerns. And let me go ahead and wrap this up then for today as again, we budgeted 30 minutes and I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. I want to thank you all for joining us. During the last 30 minutes, we gained some insight into the generations in the workplace. We gained an understanding of why does it matter, and we learned 5 tips for leading multi-generational teams. Again, we want to thank you all very much for joining us. We do offer this workshop as half and full day workshops, and we're very excited to partner with Cam in the evolution of his Leading Multi-Generational Teams workshops. If you're interested in finding out more about NewView Business Solutions, Generational Insights, or Leading Multi-Generational Teams Effectively workshops, please contact us at info@newview.com or 919-562-5599. Following this call, within about the next 90 minutes, you will receive a recorded follow-up from this meeting. And please don't hesitate. If you don't receive the email, please check your junk mail or spam folder. Sometimes they do go there. And thank you again very much for joining us today.